Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. This is part one of my conversation with Carmine. He goes by Carmine's Cards out on Instagram. He also has a podcast and a YouTube channel called Crosstown Cardboard that he does with his co-host Craig. Great show. I want to thank Rob, sports card therapist, for making this connection because I had never gotten a chance to talk to another serious Larry Bird collector, and that's what Carmine is here. I mean, this is episode 33 of 3 and 3. I had to connect with a Larry Bird collector on here. So really fun conversation for me. And he's got a great job too, Carmine. He right now is a sports broadcaster covering the Clemson college football team, and just a great guy to talk to. I learned a lot from this conversation. He comes from a different time period. He was born, I think he says here, in 1994. So I really stopped collecting right around that time, maybe 95. So he's a younger guy than me. He's 29 years old. So he comes from a different era of the hobby. And he has a lot of knowledge on some of these newer Larry Bird sets and cards that I really don't have a lot of knowledge of. So great conversation. Hope you enjoy it too. Again, this will be a two-part episode. And here we go. Episode 33 of 3 and 3. Very special episode. And I'm joined by, this is exciting, another Larry Bird collector. Yep, there we go. Carmine of Carmine's Cards. How you doing, man?
I'm good. I did not know, Adam, that you were also a Larry Bird collector until we started recording. So this is like, fresh off the energy of finding out. I got my Bird Celtics night T-shirt, and you got the Indiana State Sycamore. So I'm excited.
And as I was saying before we jumped on here recording, I said this used to fit me a little better when I was in college. So
right,
it still works. Still works.
Looks good.
Yeah, man. So like I said, I think this might be the first time I've actually ever had a conversation with another Larry Bird collector. You mentioned earlier, there's a lot of people in the hobby that buy and sell Larry Bird cards, but to actually collect as an end game, I made a joke about this. I feel like there's more Penny Hardaway collectors than Larry Bird collectors in the hobby right now.
You might be right. Because Penny had that certain flavor, with the Magic, and then there's the element of what could have been with Shaq and making it to the finals, but getting beat by Akeem and the Rockets. So, and he's cooler. Let's be honest. Larry Bird's not the flashiest, the coolest, but as we both know, obviously he got it done.
Yeah, and I think that's what will be interesting too as we talk about this, because Larry Bird's an interesting guy to collect because most of his playing days cards came during the junk wax era. So there's a lot of his cards, but I think what we'll look at is through the years, even after his playing days, there's some awesome Larry Bird cards. And I know you're someone who collects a lot of the modern Larry Bird cards too. I hadn't done too much of that until pretty recently. So it will be interesting to kind of talk about the different eras of not only Larry Bird cards, but just the hobby in general and how you can collect a player throughout the years, even after their playing days.
100%. And like we were talking about before we hit record, I usually don't get to talk about my own collection as much because on my podcast, Crosstown Cardboard, we're basically talking about different topics. So we don't often like open the Zion case and get into it. So I'm excited to have ironically more freedom on your podcast to talk about my own collection.
Yeah. And I enjoy your show with Craig, right? Craig's your co-host on that show.
Yep.
And it was either yesterday or the day before I was watching I think it was your last episode. And you mentioned, I want to mention this, that you are actually a sports broadcaster down in South Carolina. And right now, are you covering the Clemson Tigers football team?
Yeah. Yep. That's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah. It's fun. So it kind of, I knew I wanted to do something in sports, and then sports cards is kind of like the childlike element of incorporating sports into my life. And then, the more professional element of sports in my life is my job. So it's kind of, I don't know. It's always revolved around sports. So I figure that's where one of my hobbies is at too.
Yeah, absolutely. I had Chris from Card Ladder on this for 3 and 3. I was like, episode 23, I should get a Jordan collector on there. Yep. That's kind of how I originally started the idea of the different numbers and so forth. And of course, if I'm going to do it for Jordan, I got to do it for Larry Bird, man. So 33 Larry Bird collector. Now, my story is pretty simple. I grew up a lifelong, I've been a lifelong Celtics fan, grew up in Massachusetts.
Okay.
So naturally, Larry Bird's somebody that I'd want to collect. What's your story with how you came to be a Larry Bird fan and a collector?
That's a great question, Adam. And I was thinking actually, because I've been excited about this episode all day, and I'm like, thinking in the shower, what if he asked me this question? And thankfully you asked it. So I grew up in Ossining, New York, in Westchester County, about 45 minutes to an hour north of the city. Very diverse area. So we didn't have a lot of white kids in town who played basketball. And I was the odd man out, which is fine with me. I mean, it made me tougher. It made me, have a chip on my shoulder. Like, I'm going to prove myself to a lot of the black kids in town who are my best friends to this day from basketball. And I distinctly remember, I wasn't alive for Larry Bird, obviously. I was born in 1994. So I wasn't even born by the time he was retired. So, but obviously he's the best white basketball player of all time. I don't think, anybody would even argue that. Steve Nash with his back-to-back MVPs, but he's not Larry Bird with the championships and, all around game. And I'll never forget when I got into this argument with my friends outside of my house playing basketball, and they're like, "Oh, Larry Bird, that white guy couldn't play." And I remember going inside, logging onto my mom's computer. This is probably like 7th or 8th grade, printing out Larry Bird's career stat sheet on the old school desktop and the HP printer, bringing it outside. And I said, "Look at this guy's stats and what he did in his career. And you tell me he couldn't play." And they're like, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know he averaged 29 a game. And, I didn't know he was, wow, 3 MVPs in a row. Wow. Oh, I didn't know that." And I'm like, "Thank you." I had to like defend myself. And so, just like in anything else, you identify with somebody who looks like you. And so I identified with Larry Bird, and I was the odd man out white kid in my town playing basketball. Um, but so that was why I went for him, and then also Steve Nash, because he was the most current white guy who I could identify with, and kind of pushed me in that direction, as the outlier and trying to make a name for yourself and gain the respect of everybody else.
Yeah, I mean that's a great story. And I was born in '81. I figured you were younger than me. I wasn't sure how much, but that
Right.
makes sense. I pretty much stopped collecting right around when you were born. Like right around '95 is when I stopped collecting.
Okay.
And being born in '81, most of Bird's like prime years were already over by the time I really remember watching it. But
Right.
obviously, my dad would relay, and my mom's a big Celtics fan, so she would
Mhm.
relay the legend of Larry Bird. And I was just on the cusp of it. So I remember starting to watch like 88, 89, and Bird was still really good, but his peak years were before
Right.
that. So,
Right.
and that's, there, I don't remember watching their last championship. So, you know, I missed it like live, so to speak. But, the thing with Bird was always, for me, it was absolutely the stats and the MVPs Larry Legend.
Right.
He's just a legend. But if you look at his highlight, not just his stats, but you look at the way he played, I mean, it was
Yeah.
just
Yes.
unbelievable. He's so unique, man. Of not just a scorer, but like all around game and just the style that he played was
Yep.
that for me is like for what makes him the cool. Him and Magic were just such team players. They made everyone around him so much better, and that's what I love. Like there's not too many guys that I've seen that can do it to that level. Michael Jordan did it in a different way, but
Right.
Bird and Magic had their own style at the same time. So it was just, it's just the peak for me, the peak of basketball.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. No, I
yeah,
agree. And I think that'll come up also with because like Magic is my second guy who I collect. And it's funny because I didn't live through either one of their careers. But just being a basketball nut that I am, I feel like you can't have one without the other.
right.
So, but like you said, just the way they impacted winning, like you watch like a full game of theirs or the highlights with the passing and the excitement and just the plays that it took to win, like at the right time. I feel like that's so underrated. Like you said, it's way more than just the stats because a lot of guys these days they put up a lot of numbers, but at the same time, you're not impacting winning as much as if you watch a real game of Bird and Magic. they're controlling all the action. Like it is incredible.
Yeah, and they brought in so many new fans. People who weren't fans of basketball, they became fans of basketball in the 80s
Hmm.
because of those two
Hmm.
guys. And even if you didn't really know the game, you could watch the way they played, and it was just like it was art. So
Yeah. Yeah.
they saved the NBA. And again, going back to what I said earlier, it's just I know it depends on the age of people in the hobby and so forth, but it just is amazing to me how few, at least that I see on social media and stuff like that, how few Magic Johnson and Larry Bird true collectors there actually are, compared to, like, some of these guys in the 90s that maybe they came through a better card period, during the PMGs and the essential credentials and all these big cards in the Jordan era. But man, they, from a player standpoint, they don't come anywhere close. But yet there's more people that collect those other guys, I think, just because of the time period they played in. So yeah,
Yeah, true. And I think also with that, they also sign so much. Like I was joking with my mom, and I'm like, I think these days, well, Magic has a lot more going on than Bird does as far as his business ventures and co-owning teams and all that. But I'm like, I'm pretty sure they wake up, have their coffee, sign until lunch, have lunch, sign until dinner. But they do have a lot of autographs out there. But I am also surprised that there's not more people, you know, crazed about Bird and Magic, but maybe they're just slightly too early for the main collector, like 40-year-old standard guy you might think of in the hobby. Maybe they're just like slightly too old. I don't know. And then Jordan came along too and kind of I maybe took a lot of the excitement
yeah,
from these guys, up them one, and
yes.
maybe that's part of it.
Well, we'll get into a little more of that, but on 3 and 3 here, that if this is someone's first time catching one of these, we're going to look at 3 of Carmine's favorite cards in his collection, and then we're going to look at 3 cards that he wants to add to the collection. So, Carmine, if you're ready with card number 1, let's do it.
Okay. I will, I can I do a twofer for number one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. He's
Okay,
already
okay.
cheating. He's already cheating the
I'm
system.
cheating.
That's
I'm
okay.
sorry. I'm sorry, but they're both Bird and Magic autographs, dual autographs. So, thanks for taking me full screen there, Adam. So, I got a Bird and Magic dual autograph here. It's SP Authentic 2012 2013, and this one is honoring Adam, the jersey you have on, the Indiana State Sycamores
Yeah.
against Michigan State 1979, the national championship game. Got the dual autograph of Magic and Bird on the hardwood there, and
Wow.
it's not from that court, but still it's kind of a cool homage to their meeting in the national championship and then kicking off their rivalry into the pros. But hard to believe, 45 years later, almost still the most watched championship game in NCAA history. And you think not only about the interest in sports growing since then, but just how much the U.S. population has grown since then. It's almost unthinkable that this would magnetize the country. You got the Hick from French Lick, and of course, Magic from inner city Michigan, black guy, white guy, outgoing black guy, introverted white guy. So you had
Yep.
the total ends of the spectrum, and it brought everybody together. And I think the country together also, by seeing them compete against each other and eventually become great friends. So you have that dual autograph from the college days. And then this one is from the pro days, Magic and the Lakers, Larry and the Celtics, of course. And it also, what I like about this card, it's exquisite. So, the Primo brand, pre-Panini. And then you also have it as the finalist set. So it has the Larry O'Brien trophy, kind of honoring all their showdowns in the finals and then the championships that each of them won. 5 for Magic, 3 for Bird. And it's numbered out of 25, dual autograph, both on card. It's what year is it? 2008. Exquisite. So that's my third of the bunch there.
Man, that's what's cool about, like I was saying, after you get out of his playing years, there's so many cards, but like I'd never seen those two. I mean, I've heard of obviously Exquisite and everything, but
Right.
that first one, never seen that one before, and never seen that particular Exquisite. But man, dual auto Magic Bird, wow, I love that. Great
Yeah, and
card.
I got those. Thank you. I got those recently, And the exquisite here, I was like, it was 1 or 2 weeks before the national, this most recent national, and I'm like, I saw this on my buddy Mikey's Cards Instagram, and I'm like, I've really been saving up for the national. It's the first one I'm going to. Do I want to blow my money before I get there? I've been saving for this. I'm looking for cool cards, especially Bird and Magic also is up there. And then I'm like, well, if I saw this at the national, this would be something I went there for. So I convinced myself that I was okay spending the money that I saved for the national pre-national, because this was a card that I would have gotten. And I spent 2,800 cash on this one, which is a lot for me. That's like, instantly top 3 most expensive cards. But
Those
yeah, with it,
exquisite cards, they
I
really
know.
command a high price. Tell me,
Yes.
because that's an area where I haven't really dug too deep into, and I'm not that knowledgeable on it. I want to kind of get into that more. Tell me about the exquisite brand. Why is that? Started. What did it start in '03? It came out,
I
or
think I think yeah, I think it matched
okay.
LeBron's year
So that
also. So
obviously plays a big role into why it's such a coveted
yeah.
set.
And then it
Okay.
was just that was I wasn't in the ballpark to buy the exquisite at the time when I was a kid collecting, but I knew that this was the primo number one brand when I was collecting. I'm like,
Right.
that's the flawless of back then.
Right.
In my head, like when I collected and then leaving for about 15 years and then rediscovering during the pandemic, like a lot of people, and figuring out what's the most like upper echelon brand if I'm really going to invest or collect something really nice. So yeah, I remember that being the number one from when I was a kid and never being able to get it. And so to get a dual autograph of my two, favorite guys, and then have it be that brand that I could never get, it was pretty cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, when I was first started collecting basketball cards, there weren't any like primo brands in the late
Right.
'80s, early '90s. It was just like
Tops.
clear and pops, or upper
Right.
deck or whatever. Yeah, but there was that's why it's so funny to see the different eras and the type of cards for the same player that you can collect, based on when
Mhm.
you collect the cards. Yep.
Yeah,
All right,
100% agree.
let's go number two.
All right. So, well, all right. Since this is a Larry Bird episode, I'll save one of them because I feel like building up to the crescendo. But for this one, what's also interesting, Adam, is you being born in 1981, Larry Bird's first year having his solo Topps rookie card.
Yes.
So,
And that's a very important. I'll give you a quick version of it. That's a very important card for me because
okay.
that's the card that, like I said, I collected from '86 to '95, like a lot of kids that
Hmm.
my age, and then I really started buying cards again when I graduated college in 2003. Right when I noticed eBay and was buying cards and so forth, but nothing really to do with Bird yet, or any of like the vintage cards that I collect now. But really, it was about like 2015, 2016 when, again, I had no idea there was like a social media sports card hobby thing or YouTube or anything like that. I was
Right.
just, I'd hop on eBay and buy cards here and there, and that was it. I didn't know anyone else who collected. But one of the cards that I bought, I think it was like 2016, 17, was that 81 Bird in a PSA 10.
Wow.
And if I got that card for it was a big purchase at the time, but I had no idea on the population. I just knew like, hey, here's a PSA 10 Bird 81 sitting here on eBay, and
Right.
it was about $700. Okay, so that was a lot. That was a big purchase for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Flash forward, I just happened to see. I think it was like Bill Simmons or something unrelated to sports cards, but within sports. I think he like reposted something about how that card, PSA 10, January of 2021, had just sold for $49,000 at Heritage Auctions. And
No.
I was like just staring at I'm like, what? Well, I like ran to my closet, like looking for the card. I'm like, the one I have, so it turns out there was only like 58 of those in PSA 10 at the time. So just in a matter of
Wow.
5 years or 4 years, it had gone from now that was, if 2021, that was an anomaly for sure.
Right.
So of course that's kind of what got my attention. It was just cool for me to see like, whoa, sports cards are this popular now. I had no idea. I was just doing it in a vacuum. But anyway, I'll
Right.
tell the longer story. But I ended up selling that card for a big profit, not 49,000, but a good amount, about what it still goes for now. And that
Wow.
kind of kicked me off back into this thing where I had some money to play with, and I missed the card, but I don't. I think of all the cards that I bought with that money, and so anyway, that card is very special to me
Wow.
because it signifies so much within the hobby for me and bringing me back basically.
Wow. It also signifies a lot in dollar signs too.
Yes, and
Oh,
a lot of great cards that I
do
bought.
you care if I say how much it's going for now? I mean, I guess anybody could look it up
No,
anyway.
and I mentioned this. Mine sold for 28,500 or something like that
Are
to be
you
exact.
kidding me?
28,000 a card that I bought like 4 or 5 years earlier for about $700.
Oh my gosh, that is insane.
Well, I don't think we'll ever see that ever again as far as in a short time period. I bought those cards just
Whew.
I was just like, hey, these would be cool things to have. And like, I didn't even look at the values again within that 5 years. I just figured, hey, you know what? Someday when I'm really old, maybe it'll be worth more. And it's just cool to have or to hand down.
Yeah,
Never in a million years did I think it would ever go up that much, let alone in that short time period. It's just
right. Well,
nuts.
good for you because your heart was in the right place, and then you made the smart move and capitalized on. You would be crazy to pass up that opportunity. And now it's down to 18,000 was the last sold
Okay, so
according to
yeah,
Card Ladder. So
it's come down. There's been a few more added. I think there's like 63 or 4 of them in there now. So 4 or 5, 6 came out of the woodwork that graded a
yeah.
10. But it's just such a hard card to get in a 10 that it still maintains its value.
And that's
You know,
funny too, because I saw one at the National, and I'm like, I don't really do a lot in vintage, although the next card that I'll show actually, well, could be considered vintage to some, but so I don't really know this market. I know a lot more about the Larry Bird current stuff like Flawless and some of those brands and National Treasures and Immaculate, that kind of thing. But I saw this PSA 10, same card you're talking about that you bought and sold at the National in a showcase. And I was like, oh, that's probably a few $1,000s, because I'm thinking kind of in the junk wax realm
right?
that it was overproduced, overprinted, and I had no idea the population right now is only 68, and I had no idea that it was going for that much because I know the PSA 9s and below are reasonable. Like the last
Right.
PSA 9 went for 600, and it's around there
Right.
with a 1400 pop, and then you go up to PSA 10 and you're at 68. So
Yep.
I did not know that until looking it up, and was blown away by that.
You're telling me, man, that was I just couldn't believe it. So yeah, anyway, that's that, and here I am, whatever, 3 years later, and it's just kind of spiraled into all
Did,
this stuff
did,
I'm doing
did
now.
that money go back into sports cards mostly, or did you
Yeah.
use any for living expenses or anything else?
No, I basically what I did with it is it was all gravy. So I basically said, all right, you know what? I was in the hobby, man. I was like, wow, it had my attention, right?
After that
So
sale,
yeah,
it got your attention after that sale.
yeah, man. So I actually took that entire profit and I ended up buying a lot of cards with it, vintage cards, some bad purchases like Kevin Durant cards.
Okay,
So
yeah,
I made some mistakes with it, but by and large, I put it to good use because I did buy a lot of Mickey Mantle cards with it and stuff that I'm holding on to long term, and I think will do pretty well. So
okay.
yeah, I put it all back into cards.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
So anyway, sorry for that sidetrack, but I
Oh no, that
figured
was
I
great.
should bring that
You
up. But
got it.
yeah,
You got to talk about that. A cool $27,300 profit.
man,
That's pretty
yeah,
good.
that will never happen to me again. I don't think I've ever made money on a sports card other than that one card. Everything else,
That's all right. You hit
I've
the
made money
lottery
on.
one time, and then now
Yeah,
you've been buying scratch offs ever since.
exactly. All right, over to you. Whenever you're ready with your next card.
Okay, next card. 1 year before you were born, Adam. 1980 tops.
Oh,
Triple. It's the triple of Bird and Magic's first tops card, but on it
oh my,
together on either side of the triple perforated card there with Dr. J, who was the scoring leader at the time, in the middle. So 1980 tops, all three of those guys. But the key here is it's signed by all three guys. So it's a PSA 5 condition. But also the key, I think, is the 10 auto, because you want that auto to be real bold and beautiful. and especially if it's in person too. So I picked this up at the National, the most recent one. So this was at our Wolfpack trade night. We have like a little group, between me and Craig. You mentioned my podcast host. We have Ken, Sports Card Lessons, Cousin Oz and Tony, who do the Cousins Collectibles podcast, Sports Card Therapist Rob, and also we have Dave, DJ Sports Cards 86. So we had a little group trade night, and it just kind of came full circle because I was able to, at our own trade night that we were hosting, pick up a card that I had really been after because of the 3 autos. And also, Bird and Magic, their first card from Topps 1980, the year before you were born, and then they came out with their first individual rookie cards, and all 3 signed. So I looked up the numbers, and if you want to get each of these guys to sign this particular card in person, it's already like $1,800 just for their signatures for this card, because they charge a premium, knowing that a lot of people want to get this card signed as an iconic card. And then that's not to mention the cost of buying the card itself, which in good condition will be several hundred or in the thousands. And then the transportation to find out where these guys are going, fly or drive wherever they're at, stay in a hotel, hunt them down, and pay a multiplier of what they charge for a regular card to sign this. So pretty happy to ecstatic really to get this at the National.
Incredible collectible right there, man. That's a Mount Rushmore basketball card. And you know how tough it must be to get a 10, I would think a 10 auto on that, because first of all, it's a tough card to autograph on, right? You get the 3 panels, and then all 3 have to get a 10 in order for it to get a 10, right? So,
right.
I mean, man, that's a great card right there on its own. And then you add in that factor of the 3 autos, man. Wow. Incredible.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I think this is my favorite card in my collection, but it's not the card I saved for last, because this is really a Larry Bird themed episode, or else I would have had it at number 1, just with, like you said, the iconic significance of the 3 all-time greats on the same card, Bird and Magic, first card printed as pros. And I cannot imagine the story behind whoever got all 3 of these autographs. Like, did they get like Magic and Bird at the same time and Dr. J separate? Did they track all these guys down over a course of 5 or 10 years? How did they preserve the card in between each individual guy autographed it? It's just like so many questions that I wish, there was, like, if you scanned the QR code on the PSA slab, it could bring you up the story of however they track these guys down. So,
and it's such a great card. My cat's even getting excited to meow.
A little tail wagging. Nice.
Yeah. Even my cat loves that card. Oh man, that's awesome. That would be one on my list for Larry Bird, is to, because I've seen, part of me was like, I never even thought it would be possible when I was like, you get a triple auto, and then I've seen a few of those now, and man, that is for sure, like, that's a grail right there. Unbelievable.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think in any grade, I think it's around maybe a 500 population. I think there's like 300 or so higher than this PSA 5 with a 10 auto.
Wow.
But, especially with how much it costs and the difficulty, let alone the price, but the difficulty to track all 3 of these guys down at whatever signing we're at, it just is an automatic population limiter and a value increaser in my mind if you were looking at it as an investment, which I also am. Because if I put $3,000 to $4,000 or around there of my own money or trade value into something, I want to be pretty confident it's gonna hold its value.
Yeah, I say that all the time, man. Look, if you're putting real money into cards like we are, look, we love these cards, but we also want to make sure we're buying stuff that we think at least has a chance of holding its value at the very least. Let alone, if we're lucky, maybe it goes up. But yeah, we don't want to throw our money away either. So yeah, I think buying things like that, I think it's as sure of a bet as there probably is. There's no guarantees, but I think that's pretty good right there. I think you're looking good right there.
Thank you. Yeah, I hope so. All right. This is the number 1 that I saved, and it's Larry Bird autograph patch, and it's flawless, and it's a 1 of 1. So I also got this at the most recent National, And I was kind of going back and forth, which is my favorite card between the 1980 Topps Triple Auto and the Bird 1 of 1. And I'm still somewhat torn about it, but for our Larry Bird theme, I got to go with the 1 of 1. So that's an extreme limiter right there on the population, of course. And then with the patch auto, which is my favorite type of card with a patch auto, game used, and flawless, which is my favorite current brand, and exquisite is my favorite older brand. So when I had the opportunity to get this at the National, I just had to do it. And I had actually known the guy before this. He saw that I was a Larry Bird collector on one of the Facebook groups, and we had been talking. He didn't have this card at the time, but I saw him at the National. We were just like perusing the thousands of setups, and we just happened to bump into each other. And he said, "Oh, hey, you're Carmine. I listen to your podcast. I was the one messaging you on Facebook." And I said, "Oh, great. Perfect." And he showed me the Larry Bird cards that he brought with him, and he was set up as a dealer. So I took a picture of the Larry Bird cards, and I said, "Oh, yeah, I'll have to come by your table. Where are you at?" Got his number, got his location, and started immediately formulating a plan for which Larry Bird card I wanted out of the ones that he had. He also had a National Treasures 1 of 1 patch auto, the Clutch Factor one, and it was vertical. But I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to get something that I never want to give up unless it's like a ridiculous offer, and something that would be an all-time display piece in my collection. So I said, flawless, patch auto, 1 of 1. I got to go after it. And so thankfully he was able to take mostly trade. And it was funny though, this story, because I traded to him a card that he previously owned. So I traded him back a card that he had before. It was also a Larry Bird 1 of 1, but it was an immaculate, or no, I'm sorry, it was impeccable 1 of 1 auto with a piece of the jersey. It was a multicolored jersey, but it was not a patch. It was almost like on the Sycamores part of your jersey, how you have the two colors there on the shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the piece. So it wasn't quite a patch, so it was much less valuable. And I had traded for that at the Burbank card show. But when I traded this back to the guy, I took $1,000 loss. And I included it in the trade because I knew I didn't have that much cash. So I said, I got to let go of this Bird 1 of 1 to get a much better Bird 1 of 1. And I also in that trade included a Trevor Lawrence XRC rookie auto number /99 from Select. And I had made $1,000 profit on that trade to get into the Trevor Lawrence, which I had just gotten into the day before, also at the National. So if I hadn't made that move, I wouldn't have been set up to go after this all-time grail for myself. And so the $1,000 loss with the other Bird 1 of 1 that this guy had previously owned, he took back. And then I made the $1,000 profit on the Lawrence. So it was kind of a wash. And I threw some cash on top with a exquisite Bird patch auto. And actually it was more of a jersey auto. But so I'm into this for like 5,000. But and like you said, that's a lot of money. That's more money than I have in my checking account right now, which kind of scares me. But it's such a hobby and an investment, and to get that feeling for myself, knowing that I came back into the hobby about 2 years ago and was able to get one of the best Larry Bird cards I could think of. I just couldn't pass up not only having this collectible, but having the gratification and the pat on the back, like, look at what you were able to do, to level up to this point. So that's kind of the physical representation and also the emotional gain of having that happen.
Well, that's too what makes it, like you said, even more fun and more of a great collectible, because at the end of the day, you think about the wheeling and the dealing and the strategizing that you had to do to
Right.
get that,
Right.
and it makes it even more satisfying. For me, yeah, I would look at that and say, that's a cooler story than, like, me just popping on eBay and hitting the buy it now,
Oh,
you
you
know.
cannot, you can't buy, the story that comes along with a card, especially if
Yeah.
it stays in your collection. And for him to accept a card back that he had previously owned, I was just baffled because I knew what he sold it for. He sold it to the guy I traded it for, or with, at 1,800 is what he sold this Bird Impeccable 1 of 1 with the 2-color jersey on it. And I told him, listen, I'll be honest, I'm into this for $3K. This is what I traded the guy at in Burbank, which, credit to him, he traded it to me and made $1,200 on me in the trade, but if it's a 1 of 1, hard to value. And I was so excited during that trade that I wanted a Bird 1 of 1 that I, honestly let my excitement get ahead of me as far as fairly valuing what that card was worth. So I'll admit that I made a mistake with that. And I told him I'm into it for $3K. He said, yeah, I don't really want to take this card back because I let it go. I kind of let that emotional part of the card, now it's kind of like secondhand and I don't feel the same about it. And I'm like, listen, I get that. If you were to accept this back in the trade, what would you value it at? I know what I paid for it. Don't feel bad for me. Honestly, tell me. He's like, yeah, I think I'd have to be like $2,000 on it. And I said, okay, I could do that, and I included it. I think he was a little surprised because he didn't want to offend me knowing what I had into it.
Yep.
But I also knew what I had into the Trevor Lawrence that he was interested in. So I knew that $1,000 profit mixed with the $1,000 loss would kind of be a wash, and we could work with that.
On that patch, on that card, what do you think that the white is? Do you think that's part of his name or part of a number?
Oh, good question.
Sometimes I like to try to figure that out.
Maybe it's part of the C. That's
Could
my
be some,
ultimate.
yeah.
That's my ultimate, because of kind of how it curves, at
Yeah.
that angle.
Yeah.
But I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I mean, it was pretty distinctive patch and nice. So I was like, yeah, I gotta go for it.
Beautiful. All right, before we pull up Card Ladder here and look at 3 of the Bird cards on your want list, I do want to mention, I was going to do this earlier, I forgot, but I want to credit Rob, sports card therapist, who has been on my 3 and 3 show here in the past. I heard him say, yeah, I didn't remember who it was, but he said one of my friends in the Wolf Pack is a Larry Bird collector, and
Right.
I remembered that, and I reached out to Rob and said, can you connect me with the guy you said was a Larry Bird collector? So thank you to Rob for connecting us together. And I think if it's possible, I'd love to go through the whole Wolf Pack here and have all the Wolf Pack on my channel if they'd be willing to do it. I meant to go to the Wolf Pack trade night when I was at the National, but I just couldn't. I mean, I got hung up, and next thing I knew, the night was over. So maybe next time. But I do want to connect more with the Wolf Pack because I watch a lot of the content, and I think it would be great to talk with Ken and Cousins Collectibles guys, all those guys. I want to, kind of see if I can connect with if I could.
Oh yeah, I'm sure they would love that. And the first time we were all together was at the National, so it was like we were all hanging out in our hotel room, and just all the guys that you have connected with online and talked to on podcasts and stuff like that. But then, everybody's a kid again, hanging out in the hotel room. Me being 29, all the way up to Ken, who's in his mid 50s, and it was just so great how this hobby can bring everybody together. But I'm sure they would love to hang out and talk. I mean, they're great guys, and they have chosen to do a podcast, so you're pretty sure they probably like to talk cards.
All right, that's it for part 1. But in the next video, we're continuing on talking with Carmine. We're going to be looking at 3 of the Larry Bird cards on his want list. I might break out a little fire in this one too in part 2. So stay tuned for that. Thanks, guys.